Dan Hurley was on 60 Minutes, which is a perfectly normal thing for a college basketball coach to do right before postseason play begins. And there was a quote that he gave in this interview. There's always interesting stuff that comes out of that show, but Hurley's exact quote about the state of his team and his program is 50% of my roster is considering going in the portal or knows what school they're going to already. That is as pointed as one can be. Kind of crazy for him to say it out loud. Your thoughts?
I want to know who those players are that know. Um, I mean, he's not wrong, right? Like he's bringing in, if if not the best recruiting class, the second best recruiting class behind Duke this year. He has a group of guys that are gonna want to play. So they probably are like exploring the portal if they know they're not going to necessarily get to play. I'm curious who it is. You think Terrace is on that list?
I mean, I don't like doing the game of speculation because I don't think it's fair to the kids to actually like the UConn fans are rolling their eyes because what is it fair for me to criticize him and call him stupid, but not not speculate that he might leave? I don't like being like this guy's gonna leave unless it's obvious. I don't think it's necessarily obvious with anyone. I have heard speculation that Terrace is one of many UConn players that will not be returning and that they may already know that. It is crazy. I just want to say this. Dan Hurley may be acting like this is something that is normal given the state of college basketball. Not normal for a team that has won four straight games at the end of the regular season and does believe that they have Final Four upside to have their head coach be going on record saying half my team won't be here next year. That is not normal at all.
Also not normal given he's in his own world's the best effing coach in the world. You would think if Dan Hurley has 50% of his roster getting ready to hit the portal, what is anybody else? Like it's gotta be like 80% for some of these other guys, right? Like I don't think sometimes Hurley has quotes that I love. And then sometimes he has ones that leave me thinking, like, does he think this makes himself look better? Like, does he think this makes his season look better? Because he's kind of like, in my honest opinion, this is my takeaway. And I'm always player first before coach whenever we do these videos. I'm always on the side of the players. I'm not playing for that dude because we had a bad season. We underachieved. You went out there and you had all these crazy quotes. And to me, you decided to go on 60 Minutes and throw the rest of us under the bus and be like, well, yeah, they've been in the portal in their own heads. They haven't been as locked in as a group as like I would like. Hurley, like you put this roster together. We're leaving you. Like we're leaving your program. Like part of this is on you. And instead you just threw the rest of us under the bus. Like I would be good. I love Dan Hurley, the Hurley family. I'm a Bobby guy first. Bobby guy first. But the the Hurley family is phenomenal in my opinion. And like I've defended Dan Hurley when he's done some crazy stuff, and I will continue to do so. But every once in a while, he has a quote where I think he thinks he's making himself look better. And in a way, he probably is because it's like the reason we underachieved is everybody's leaving. But in my head, you just threw your whole team under the bus and decided to take no accountability whatsoever.
So here's the players that, in theory, could be back next year, right? If you assume Caravan leaves,
Mm-hmm.
Noel, Abraham, Singare, Ross, Stewart, Mahaney, Reed, Ball. Solo Ball, Dan Hurley's been on record. He's going to be one of the best players in the country next year. We'll be shocked if he doesn't return. I don't think they want Mahaney back. I certainly am not confident they want Reed back. And then you're going down like end of bench guys like Noel and I mean Abraham, Singare, Ross Stewart that have all had varying levels of roles. I'm not sure UConn like if UConn loved these players, I think they'd already be given more serious roles than this anyway. So while I hear your point, like okay, he's kind of throwing the players under the bus. Why would the players want to do this? Whatever. I read this more as Dan Hurley has already informed these players they're not coming back next year. I think Dan Hurley realizes what we realized in the summer when we criticized him and called it out. He built a roster that's not good enough for UConn's championship standards. That would be
Mm-hmm.
why they are 35th. Dan Hurley hasn't even done a horrible job with this group. They're playing to the caliber of their roster. And next year, he's going to have a better roster because he's Dan Hurley in UConn and he learned from his mistakes.
Mhm.
So, yeah, half his players won't be here next year because they won't be invited back, is my read of this. And it's a little brash of Dan Hurley to actually say this quiet part out loud, but I don't even view this as him whining about the state of it. I view him being honest. Hey, next year my team is going to be completely different.
What's hilarious is in the middle of us recording this, Terrence Reed was just named Big East Six Man of the Year, which is kind of funny. But that's probably a different topic for a different video. But my issue with that, which I don't have any issue with Dan Hurley being like, hey, I can't have this roster back, by the way, it's more so how he's framing it. Because when you go down the list, like, yeah, like a lot of these guys probably want to leave, but it's like I said, he's bringing in the second best recruiting class. Like, I don't think he cares that they want to leave, right? Like, he's encouraging that. But my issue with it is you're not framing it like that. You're framing it like it's these players' fault. When Deion Sanders went to Colorado and did what he did, and everybody hated it, where he's like, oh, like they're like you're forcing players out. He also took the hit for it, though. I think like if you're the coach and you're like telling players to go, you better take that hit for it too. I don't feel like Dan Hurley is going to take the hit in this case, and he's going to make his players take the hit. And yeah, for some of them, it is their fault because they underachieved as individuals on this roster. But at the end of the day, like I think you're supposed to protect these kids as much as possible. Prime went in there and said, "Hey, like I'm bringing my own bags with me, and they're Louis. You guys can do whatever you want. I would encourage you guys to leave." He took the hit, gave them plenty of time to hit the portal and come up with their own stuff. Hurley is giving his players plenty of time to hit the portal as they're doing it during the season. But I feel like the way he's framing it a little bit is going to be a bit of a character gut punch for some of these guys that maybe isn't as deserved as it sounds.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Look, I also think in general, there's a lot of tampering going on. Like when Hurley says a lot of my players know where they're going already. I bet that's true.
Yeah.
I also bet that UConn's already doing their due diligence on next year's roster. That's the state of the game. Like you are at a place where you get the advantage of it more than the disadvantage of it. Even if you may be frustrated certain players are leaving, you're always going to have opportunities to play the game easier than other schools are going to have when you've won as much as Dan Hurley has. So I think we're going to see that this offseason. I am surprised he's going on record, largely just because of this. This season is not dead. As much as maybe throughout the year I've been preying on UConn's downfall, I have to sit here at the end of the year and say this team could easily make another Final Four run. They could get hot. This is not a team I would want to see in my draw. So that's the only reason it surprises me. If UConn was a little more out of the picture here, then I would be like, oh, yeah, whatever. Dan's ready to move on. He's doing the Bill Self move. This team theoretically still has a lot to play for here. And to hear him kind of just disown half his roster is a little crazy.
Crazy. He basically like his goal in all this was to say that like, hey, my group's been distracted. You know what else is distracting, G? A media press tour for your book.
Yeah. The show about the other Hurley and the 60 Minutes interview and the book that you're writing, all those things might be a little distracting.
Yeah, like the group is distracted. It's not just the players, Dan. Like you've been doing a lot of stuff this season as well. That's a little bit off the court.
Yeah. Also, Rick Pitino's on Jimmy Fallon with his whole team, and they don't seem all that distracted.
But that's what Slick Rick does. Like that's you know what I mean? Like there's certain groups where it's like, hey, these distractions make sense. Like if the NBA draft was in February and John Calipari is coaching Kentucky and he's at the draft the night before a game, I'm looking at it differently than if Mark Pope's at the draft the night before a game. Like there's some things some coaches can do and other coaches don't get to do that. And Rick Pitino, I mean, I'm surprised Rick Pitino doesn't have more TV spots. I feel like he's limited the amount that he's done.
Speaking of wild quotes, did you hear him say, his wife say, that Dan tells her that he can't take the trash out because do you think Jay Wright takes out the trash?
What?
Yeah.
That's insane. I thought he was talking about his roster. Like I can't get
No.
rid of this.
His wife, Andrea Hurley, was sitting down saying, I have to do everything. I do everything at home. Dan is worthless. And when I tell him to take out the trash, he says, you think Jay Wright took out the trash?
I need to know. I need to know what chores Jay Wright does now. Like I need.
They asked Jay Wright on I think he was on CBS or one of those, and they asked him like, "Hey, do you take out the trash?" And Jay was like, "Yeah, I take out the trash. I'm a good
That's
husband."
that's it. Can you imagine? Like, imagine if you and I like came on here and like I don't. My hypothetical girl, still single, ladies, like DMs are open. But hypothetically here, she was like, "Yo, do you take the trash out?" I'm like, "Do you think G takes the trash out?" And then Mal's just like, "Hey, man, are you gonna take the trash out?" Like the amount of trouble Jay Wright just got in because Hurley wanted to say something crazy like that. That's against every rule like guys live by. Like he just threw his own dog under the bus.
Yeah. I mean, let's just be honest about it. Dan Hurley doesn't take out the trash, but at the same time, 50% of his roster won't be back next year. I think he's taking out the trash.
Definitely taking out the trash.